Most people have seen this scene before. A big game is on. People are shouting at the screen. Some are cheering. Some are angry. Some look genuinely upset as if something very personal just happened. And right next to them, there's often another person who feels nothing at all. No excitement, no anger, no interest. Just confusion about why everyone else cares so much. If you are that person, you may have been told things like, how can you not like sports? Or, you must be boring. Or, something is wrong with you. Society often treats love for sports as normal and indifference as strange, but psychology tells a very different story. Not caring about sports does not mean you lack passion. It does not mean you are emotionless, and it definitely does not mean your brain is broken. In fact, there are real psychological and neurological reasons why some people care deeply about sports, while others feel almost nothing at all. And once you understand those reasons, the gap between sports fans and non-sports fans starts to make a lot more sense. Let's start with a simple question. Why do sports matter so much to so many people? At a deep level, humans are social creatures. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging to a group. Your group protected you. It shared food. It gave you identity. Being alone was dangerous. Being accepted meant staying alive. That instinct never disappeared. It just changed form. Today we don't rely on tribes to survive predators, but our brains still crave belonging. Sports teams quietly fill that role. They give people a group to identify with, a shared story, a sense of us versus them. When someone supports a team, their brain often releases oxytocin. This is the same chemical linked to trust, bonding, and connection. It's the chemical that helps people feel close to family and friends. In simple terms, the brain treats the team like part of the social circle, even though the players are strangers. That's why people say, "we won" when their team wins, even though they never touched the ball. Now, here's where things get interesting. People who do not care about sports often experience this tribal pull much less strongly. Their sense of identity is not built around group membership in the same way. They are more comfortable defining themselves as individuals rather than as part of a crowd. Psychologists sometimes describe this as lower tribal sensitivity. These people do not feel the same emotional reward from joining large symbolic groups. They don't automatically divide the world into sides. Winning and losing feels distant because it doesn't feel personal. Research has shown that people with low interest in sports are less likely to think in strict us versus them terms. They are less likely to feel hostility toward a rival group just because it exists. This doesn't make them better or worse. It just means their brains focus on different things, but sports fandom is not just about belonging. There's another powerful force involved: dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain linked to anticipation and motivation. It's not just about pleasure, it's about wanting. It's the feeling you get right before opening a gift, or when you're waiting for good news. Sports are full of dopamine triggers. Every play, every moment of uncertainty, every chance that something unexpected might happen. The brain loves that kind of unpredictability. When fans watch a game, their brains receive small bursts of dopamine again and again. Not because they know what will happen, but because they don't. That uncertainty keeps the brain engaged. It creates tension, excitement, and emotional investment. This is the same basic mechanism that makes cliffhangers hard to resist and makes people keep refreshing their phones for updates. The brain is wired to pay attention to outcomes that are uncertain. Brain imaging studies have shown that watching a favorite team activates reward areas of the brain similar to other highly engaging activities. The brain doesn't care where dopamine comes from. It only knows whether it wants more. For some people, sports trigger this system strongly. For others, they barely trigger it at all. People who don't care about sports usually don't get dopamine from watching competition they are not involved in. Their brains do not register the outcome as meaningful. There is no emotional hook, so the anticipation never builds. Interestingly, research suggests that some of this difference may be biological. Variations in dopamine receptors can influence how strongly people respond to competitive and spectator experiences. In other words, two people can watch the same game and have completely different brain reactions, not because one is choosing to care and the other isn't, but because their brains are wired differently. This means your lack of interest may not be a personal flaw. It may simply be how your reward system works. There's another psychological pattern worth noticing. Sports fans often experience something called reflected success. When the team wins, they feel a boost in self-esteem. When the team loses, they feel disappointment or even shame. Their emotional state rises and falls with outcomes they cannot control. People who do not invest emotionally in sports tend to separate their identity from external victories. Their sense of self is more stable. It does not depend as much on what happens outside their personal life. They are less likely to tie their worth to a scoreboard. This doesn't mean they don't care about success. It means they prefer success they can influence directly. Now, it's important to clear up a common misunderstanding. Sports fans are not shallow, they are not unintelligent, and they are not emotionally weak. In fact, many sports fans score higher on certain measures of empathy. They practice caring deeply about struggles that are not their own. They learn to feel joy, frustration, and hope for people they have never met. So why don't non-sports fans feel that same connection? The answer lies in how empathy is distributed. Every person has a limited amount of emotional energy. We can't deeply care about everything. We have to choose where our attention and compassion go. People who don't care about sports often direct their empathy elsewhere, toward close relationships, toward creative work, toward social issues, toward ideas, art, nature, or personal growth. Their emotional investment is not absent. It is simply focused in different places. Studies have found that people with low interest in sports often score higher in openness to experience. They are more drawn to new ideas, beauty, imagination, and intellectual exploration. Their brains seek meaning through understanding rather than spectacle. They still want connection. They still want purpose. They just don't find it in competitive entertainment. For some people, indifference to sports also has a personal history. Maybe they felt excluded growing up. Maybe sports culture felt aggressive or unwelcoming. Maybe they associated games with pressure or embarrassment. Or maybe they simply never understood the appeal. Not every explanation needs to be deep. Sometimes boredom is just boredom. But here's something that explains why sports fans and non-fans often talk past each other. They experience meaning differently. Sports fans often connect to stories, underdogs, comebacks, rivalries, championships. The appeal is emotional narrative. It feels like real drama with real stakes, even if those stakes are symbolic. People who don't care about sports often see randomness instead of meaning. They may wonder why they should emotionally invest in events they cannot influence, involving people they don't know, in outcomes that don't affect their daily lives. Neither perspective is wrong. They are simply different ways of satisfying the human need for meaning. Psychologists sometimes describe this difference as indirect versus direct engagement. Sports fans form one-sided emotional bonds with teams and players. Non-sports fans prefer investing energy where their actions matter, where their effort changes the outcome, where there is real feedback and participation. One person finds fulfillment watching a championship run. Another finds it building something, learning something, or deepening a relationship. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied something called flow. Flow is the state of being fully absorbed in an activity, where time fades away and focus becomes effortless. Sports can create flow for spectators, but so can reading, writing, coding, painting, problem solving, or quiet thinking. There is no single path to flow. Interestingly, people who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They spend less time emotionally riding the highs and lows of events they cannot control. Instead, they engage more directly with their own challenges and goals. There is something quietly powerful about that. So what does all of this mean? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing a basic human experience. You are simply wired to seek meaning, reward, and connection in a different way. Your brain's chemistry, your sense of identity, and your emotional focus are calibrated differently. And that difference is not a flaw. The next time someone asks if you saw the game and you honestly couldn't care less, remember this: you are not broken, you are not boring, you are not empty. You are just playing a different game. Not caring about sports doesn't mean you lack depth. It means your mind looks for meaning somewhere else, and that is perfectly human.